It's called A Salute to All Nations, but mostly America.
Great.
America did not exist. 4 centuries of work, bloodshed, loneliness, and fear created this land. We built America, and the process made us Americans.
Phew, boy, hottest 4th of July we've had in years.
America, spread your golden wings, sail on freedom's wind across the sky.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
WDW Radio, your information station.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to the WDW Radio Show, your Walt Disney World information station. I am your host and your friend, Lou Mangello, and this is show number 735, and together, as we have been since 2005, we're going to celebrate the magic of the Disney parks, movies, Marvel, Star Wars, and more here on the podcast, my weekly live video on Facebook every Wednesday night, events, blog, and so much more. Please be sure to join the community at wdwradio.com/clubhouse, subscribe to the podcast, tell a friend, and find everything else at wdwradio.com. This week, we're going to take a deep dive into the untold stories, intriguing history, countless connections, and really profound relationship between Disney and the military. Beginning with Walt, through wartime years and special programs and discounts for members of the military and their families, Disney's collaboration with the military has not only left an indelible mark on both American culture, but more importantly, on the lives of those who serve. Then stay tuned for our Disney Trivia Question of the Week and more updates at the end of the show. And if you like what you hear, please share the show and tell a friend. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of the WDW Radio Show. When you think of Disney, it conjures up images of beloved characters, enchanting theme parks, and countless and timeless stories that have captured our hearts and the hearts of millions of people over multiple generations. When you think of the military, your mind might be filled with thoughts of duty and honor and courage and defense of our nations. But what if I told you that there was a connection, a lot of connections, between what might seem like seemingly disparate realms, but there are connections that go back to Walt Disney and continue to this day. And in the past, we've looked at Walt Disney World from a military perspective back on show number 108. Yes, that's back in 2009, as well as numerous blog posts that I will link to in the show notes this week. But this week, and on this week's episode, we're going to take a deep dive into some of the stories that you may have never heard before, and intriguing histories and surprising connections as we look at sort of joining forces, right? The powerful and remarkable relationship between Disney and the military. And we're going to look at the magical roles that Disney has played in everything from boosting morale to fostering a sense of unity among military personnel and supporting the war efforts, sometimes serving as surprising inspiration, and how Disney, more importantly, continues to support members of the military and their families today. And I obviously cannot do this alone. And so this week, I am joining forces with Lee Stanley. Lee, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for reaching out, listening, and suggesting this topic. And I have to preface this segment and our conversation by saying that my and my family's sincerest gratitude and appreciation for you and those that serve and have served in the military and their families. That gratitude runs very, very deep, and the services and sacrifices of you and your families isn't just appreciated on holidays, but every single day. So thank you. I'm speaking to you, Lee, and you, other family and friends of military personnel and veterans, for all that you do.
Oh, thank you, Lou. I appreciate that. And if it wasn't for people like you, I mean, it's the people of this great country that make it worth serving.
Well, thank you. So tell me, let's give us a little bit of your origin story. We've met once before, right? Yes. Surprising, it was around food. It was a pre-cruise dessert party. But you've been with the Air Force for more than 2 decades, yeah?
Yes, I enlisted in January of 2001, right before 9/11, about 9 months prior, and was serving during 9/11 and kind of got lost. I was intending to go back to school full time and be a traditional student, but I got wrapped up in serving our country and trotting around the world and enjoying all the things that the military has to offer.
And that's great. And we'll talk about some of your personal connections as we go through this list, including at Walt Disney World and some of the ways that the military is honored there. You've taken this passion for Disney and the military and wanting to support military families with a true passion project that you and your wife set out to do, correct?
Yes. Me and my wife, when we after we had children, we decided we'd go to Walt Disney World. My wife is a huge Disney fan. I am now, but I had never been to a Disney World until I was an adult. And when we started doing the research as far as military discounts, what it entailed, there's a couple of websites, but it was a lot of Googling, a lot of fine print, a lot of hard to find information. So we decided we would start a YouTube channel just to try to make it something digestible and compact that somebody could watch in 5 to 10 minutes and get what they need to know, the important information, and then enjoy the trip instead of spending their time researching.
And that channel on YouTube is called Salute the Magic?
Yes, it is.
Great. I'll certainly link to it in the show notes. But let's sort of dig deep into a topic that we were talking before we started recording. We did not realize to a certain degree just how deep this rabbit hole goes in terms of the connections to the military. So I think that it makes most sense to start at the beginning and then work our way forward, because it's really Disney's relationship to the military dates back to 1917, and not with Walt, but with Roy, because Disney, and not just his brother Roy, but his entire family served in the military. And I think we know to a certain degree about Walt's sense of patriotism and love of his country. And if you could look into my eyes, you see, the flag waving and red, white, and blue goes up and down Liberty Square, all of the things that his patriotism, how it was displayed in the parks, but it really goes back to his family and their service in the military as well.
Yes, Roy, Herbert, all the brothers served, and Walt did in his own way in the Red Cross. I mean, that's one thing that's overlooked is the service that the Red Cross provides to the military during any operations is critical. So he's wearing a different uniform, but it's still important. But it goes from the very beginning. Yes.
Right, because Roy, and again, who's one of Walt's older brothers, served in the Navy back in World War I. He enlisted in 1917, was assigned to the USS Lakeboat No. 7 out of Norfolk, Virginia, and supported the war effort in a lot of administrative and logistical tasks. And then after the war was over, he went back to business, and then being obviously a very integral part of the Disney company. And I think when we think about Walt's family, we think about, Roy is the name that we hear, but there's like the long lost brothers. So Ray Disney, who was another one of Walt's older brothers, served in the Army during World War I. He joined the following year, was part of the 305th Field Artillery Regiment, part of the 77th Infantry. As a chauffeur and mechanic, maintaining vehicles and transporting troops, he then went back after the war to Chicago and worked as a mail carrier for many years. Herbert, another older brother, also served in World War I as part of the 337th Field Artillery Regiment, part of the 88th Infantry. And it doesn't seem, I wasn't able to find a lot in terms of exactly what Herbert's role was during his time of military service, but afterwards he left and then worked as a machinist and carpenter. And you sort of mentioned Walt. And the thing that I love about Walt's story about joining the military is that he wanted to so desperately at the age of 16, as all of his brothers had gone in, excuse me, he wasn't old enough to enlist. So he lied about his age. I know we don't want to think about Walt being a liar, but this one we can understand. And that's how he joined the American Red Cross Ambulance Corps to support, transportation for wounded soldiers. But he never was able to actually go and see active combat because the war ended before he could be deployed to the front lines. But he was in France in a lot of non-combat tasks in terms of driving Red Cross officials and transporting supplies. But I think, Lee, it's really important to put a pin in this, because I think his experience in the ambulance corps really had a significant impact on his life and his creative career, because I think he was exposed to so much. And I don't just mean in terms of the devastating war efforts, but going over to France and being exposed to different cultures and different stories. It had to have not only helped him develop certain skills, but ones that would later influence his own storytelling abilities.
Oh, without a doubt, anytime you get immersed into a culture on a long, when you're in France for months versus a couple of weeks, you learn so much more, and you pick up on these details that I know it found its way into Disney culture, between theme parks or the movies. There's no way you can be exposed to that and not creep in.
And, even when he was younger, during the First World War, he was drawing patriotic cartoons for his school newspaper, which really evidenced at an early age his passionate support for the troops. And he was even sort of incorporating into that efforts to encourage others to support the war efforts, like saving stamps and eating less so that more food could be sent overseas for the troops. And Walt, although he sort of felt somewhat helpless, but he also kind of felt guilty that he wasn't able to do more in order to support the efforts, even though his parents weren't happy about his plans to go overseas. They sort of reluctantly had to allow him to go overseas. When he's like, look, I don't want my grandchildren to ask me, why weren't you in the war? Why were you a slacker? And I love that at such a young age, he had such an incredible sense of responsibility and duty and service to his country.
No, it's just incredible. I mean, it's one of them things that carried over, not just in his young life, it carried over all the way throughout, at post World War I, even heading into World War II, when he started working with not just the American Air Force, or American military, but all Allied forces.
Yeah, and we could sort of, there's a lot of, there's more stories, and I know Jim Corcus, I think, has a book and written articles about Walt and his time during World War I. But you're right, it's sort of moving forward to Disney as a company really starting to be able to expand on that during the wartime efforts, because when the attack on Pearl Harbor took place on December 7th, 1941, That's obviously what propelled the U.S. to enter into World War II. And the entire country sort of mobilized their industries and resources to support the war effort. About a quarter of the 600 Disney employees were drafted or voluntarily went into service. And so this extension of Walt's personal obligation and love of country and sense of service, and this nationwide rallying around the war effort immediately sort of translated into a very patriotic response from Walt, the individual, and Walt Disney Studios, the company, to contribute to the war effort in any way possible. And they did it in a lot of very significant ways.
Yeah, if you look, it was in every way, between allowing and encouraging people to enlist, between letting the Army come in and even occupy the studios to help protect a Lockheed factory, the number of films and projects that they worked on, the insignias that they made, which we can go, it covers every span of the company.
Yeah, and I think, and this is why I wanted to this is why this topic, when you sent this to me, really intrigued me, because I don't think the people understand just what the impact of the company was when this happened. So let's sort of go back in time. Excuse me. It's early 1942. The U.S. government actually approaches Disney and says, how can you help us sort of collaborate on, let's just sort of use the talents and service, that you have. We want you to help produce some training and propaganda films for the military, because they see the power of animation and films in a communication medium, and Disney obviously being a very valuable asset. And we'll talk about some of the films that they created, but you sort of mentioned it wasn't just the creation and utilization of resources, but in June of 1942, the studio in California really sort of transitioned into a war plant, and it focused on producing wartime material. So let's think about the time. It's 1942. Excuse me. The studio is reveling in the success of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and they are investing all of that money, as Walt was wont to do, into making Pinocchio. And then on December 8th, 1941, the animation studio gave half of their buildings to the U.S. troops, with one of the commanders actually taking up residence for a few days in Walt's office. So when we talk about taking over the studio, this is not, using sort of a soundstage or a warehouse. They really sort of occupied the studios and converted it to help meet the needs of the military. And this is when they started to create some of the things you talked about, those instructional films, the propaganda, the military insignias. And this was almost an all-in commitment by the studios to help support the military in any and every way that they had at their disposal.
Yeah, it's an incredible thing about that. Once the Army moved in, the studio had to change. They had to have now security protocols that they never had. They had to submit all the employees' birth certificates, and they had to be background checked, and they had to have photo IDs made for everybody, all the way, including Walt. He had to have a photo ID to go in certain places, because they were working on some serious thing. We're not making cartoons, we're making training videos, and some of this stuff was top secret at the time. They made for the bomb sites, training how to use bomb sites, things that had not been done before by any studio. They also did some not so secret things, like the four methods of flush riveting, which is I still love, and I watch. I show it as in the background for filler time when I'm doing training classes. But it's amazing the different aspects that just took over the studio.
Right, and taking over is really the operative term, because 90% of the employees were devoted to the production of these training and propaganda films. So, you think about it, the production of the output of the studio decreases in this massive way, because the general public didn't get to see most of, the top secret or educational films, which amounted to about 93% of what the studio was putting out. And you're right. Think about the studio working on films like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Mickey Mouse shorts, animation. Now they're doing things like aircraft identification, precision bombing, and Pacific Islands slated for invasion, dental health, venereal disease. Like, there's a lot of very strange, there's a one of the films is called Winged Scourge, where the Seven Dwarfs show how to combat malaria. New Spirit is Donald Duck demonstrating the importance of paying income taxes. So it wasn't just training for the military, but things for, and these are obviously the ones that the public was able to see, to help sort of rally the public around the war effort. And, and there really were only two that had any sort of significant public showings, and one of them, which is Victory Through Air Power, which was the only film of that time that Walt controlled completely from start to finish. It generated, no money for the studio, but really was a demonstration of the commitment of Disney. But some of the other propaganda films, Lee, were interesting to say the least. Let's just say you're never going to see these on Disney Plus. So, there's a film called Education for Death, and De Fuhrer's Face, again, meant to boost morale, promote patriotism, educate audiences about the various aspects of war. But De Fuhrer's Face from 1943 is this satirical look at Nazi Germany starring Donald Duck, which really was meant to not just sort of poke fun, but really sort of advocated for the strategic importance of air power in warfare.
Yeah. Also, the Fuhrer's Face won an Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film. I'm kind of glad we don't have to vote on the Academy Awards based on how they manipulate
but it shows the importance and the significance. We sort of laugh about it now, but think about the time and what is going on, just how powerful that film must have been. And for the Academy to recognize that, I think speaks volumes.
No, it definitely does. And you mentioned Victory Through Air Power being significant. That Walt paid for that personally because he read the book Victory Through Air Power, and he thought that the message in it needed to be broadcast to not just, quote, the book reading public. Walt wanted that message to be everybody. And matter of fact, Winston Churchill viewed it and told FDR, President Roosevelt, you need to watch Walt's movie Victory Through Air Power. And it actually changed some of the strategic planning of the military at the time. I mean, actually influenced the war itself.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I really want to stress, we're sort of laughing about it, and they think, well, they're making sort of these propaganda cartoons. It had impact and influence, not just on the military, but on, I think, the public as well, too. I mean, in terms of disseminating information and in helping to instill a sense of patriotism, there were sort of the two sides of what the studio was doing in terms of the animation that they were producing. Again, this was not a sort of profit-making, we'll talk about that aspect of it too, but this was not sort of an effort to make money. This was an effort to sort of help the country in the most meaningful way possible. But even in addition to the animation, and again, starting with Walt, Disney did a lot in terms of emblem and insignia design. And there's a good chance you've probably have seen some of these, whether it is in, sort of retro advertisements. If you've been to Castaway Cay, you've seen some of the nose type art. But again, going back to Walt, when he's serving as his Red Cross ambulance driver, he embellished his ambulance and other vehicles with drawings and different cartoon figures, understanding, I think, the importance of adding a little bit of humor to the insignias to, help a sense of morale. And so it's not surprising that during the Second World War, Disney used this same type of inspiration and talents to design military insignia and elements to specific squadrons and battalions and other military divisions. A lot of aircraft nose art that had characters and illustrations and personalized designs. And some of the notable artists, Hank Porter and Roy Williams, did a lot of those for the American Eagle Squadron and the Royal Air Force and the Flying Tiger insignia for the 14th Air Force. He later became the inventor of the Mickey Mouse ears, work on the Mickey Mouse Club. They did work on military vehicles as well, too. They also did a lot on tanks and really not just worked for, but collaborated with the different military units to help them understand the identity of the units and their history and the designs and the themes for their insignias and vehicle artwork.
Yeah, over the course of the war period, they made over 1,200 different insignias for different units, and they used all the characters. From what I can recall, the only character that was not used, only Disney character was Bambi, which ironically, Bambi was voiced by a military member himself. But yeah, and the unit insignia is something very special. That's one thing among you trade. When you meet somebody from another unit, and once you build a camaraderie, a lot of times you'll trade your patch with each other as just kind of a keepsake, or oh hey, I got that from that, or I was working with him, and that's this unit out in Kansas but it's something that every service member identifies with because they are part of that unit, and it's very morale boosting, and it's kind of hard. You can't. It's special for Disney to have done all those for free, and a lot of them I really like. I wish I could. I'd love to have a display of reproduction in my house.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that all the artwork was done by the studios free of charge as a donation to the war effort. But I have to imagine, Lee, it also helped to instill a sense of unique identity and pride, and probably helped, like you said, with the trading of the patches, forming a sense of uplifted morale and camaraderie between members of units and battalions, as well as sort of across the war effort as well. And they did this not just for the U.S. They also did it for the U.K. and Canada and France and New Zealand. I mean, a number of other countries as well, because I think they saw just how important it was to the members of the military as well.
Yeah, all the Allied forces, I believe, use it, and it shows how popular Disney was at the time. But it also extended all the way into POW camps. Walt was receiving letters from a POW, and because they kind of form their own little unit while they're prisoners of war within themselves, and a letter got to him, and he decided an insignia for a group of POWs. Wow.
And the interesting thing, too, is that when we're talking about some of these insignias, these are not ones that have an image of, a bird and a lion. They're using Disney characters in all of these logos. And the most requested one was not Mickey Mouse, but Donald Duck. Donald Duck was in about 220 different unit designs. Mickey wasn't second. Pluto was with 45. Goofy was third at 38. Dumbo was fourth at 20. No, sorry. Mickey Mouse was fourth at 37, and Dumbo was fifth with 20. And then Snow White was used only once for a medical unit. So I love the fact that he wasn't worried about, the preservation of the integrity of the character. He was willing to allow them to be portrayed in ways that normally we know how protective Disney is of their characters and their IP. He was willing to forego that in an effort to help the war effort.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, there was no holding back. Matter of fact, he actually dedicated at least a team of 6, from what I could find. 6 of his animators pulled aside. You are drawing insignias for the troops, and just such a morale booster for these guys.
And it was a morale booster for those who were serving. It was a morale and patriotism booster for those people who were at home, right? So, and to not just entertain, but to inform, and I think more importantly, mobilize the civilian population, right? So we talked about things like not just sort of supporting the war effort in a general sense, but rationing and scrap collecting and guidance on, paying your income taxes, because not that you have an obligation to, but when you frame it in a sense of you paying your income taxes helps to support the war effort, helps to help end the war and bring these men home, I have to imagine was very, very compelling for the public at large in the U.S.
Yeah, and it shows the scope. I mean, how successful was he? He got people to want to pay income tax. They said the studies, 37% of the people wanted to pay income tax after watching the film. It just
yeah. And it's it's interesting too, because Walt did this not for the money, but because he wanted to help. But obviously, he had to. The government was willing to pay, albeit slowly, some payment to the studios. But Walt had to go to Congress in order to get paid, because the government was not necessarily the fastest to pay and not necessarily paying on time. So, even though there was this promise to pay for work, Walt had to sort of go to Congress and make these extra efforts, because you have to also think about it too. While this is going on, the Disney studio is really the only studio that has put its productions of things like Pinocchio, for all intents and purposes, on pause, right? They're barely breaking even. They're creating, literally hundreds and thousands of feet of animation film, right? They normally would be doing about 37,000 feet per year. They're doing 220,000 feet of film per year. So you see that the output is not just not for the public, but the output is increased wildly. Other studios are producing little films like Citizen Kane, Casablanca, Going My Way, Double and all of these other studios are cranking out blockbuster hits, while Disney is very much on pause. The movie industry as a whole in the mid 40s and 50s is having their best years yet, but there was a lot of sort of negative effects on the studio at this time too. Remember, the war also came right on the heels of the animator strike that almost brought the studio to a halt in 41, right? And again, the studio strike is a separate topic for a separate day, but there was a very tumultuous time. Walt felt sort of betrayed and hurt by the artists. The artists also felt that they were, underappreciated. And I think this was probably a very difficult time for Walt as well. He wasn't necessarily doing a lot of the day-to-day hands-on stuff. There's a financial, creative, psychological impact that led to, I think had a domino effect on some of the motion pictures and even short films that came out afterwards, because there's a number of years literally that were not productive for, not just because of the strike, but because of the war effort. And Walt had to do a lot of things to try and just keep his studio afloat.
Yeah, he definitely started looking around. And I think that was also one of the key things. Was I think it allowed the studio to kind of come together. Now the strike is over. We have a common goal, though, in winning this war. It did allow everybody to kind of congeal and become a team again. But it definitely come at a cost. And Walt also, he made it a point. He did not want to make a profit. He did not want to be profiting off of the war because it was such a terrible thing. He doesn't want to make money off the suffering of others. But luckily, everybody stuck together and came through in the end, so we continue to make movies again. But yeah, everything went pause. Like I literally hit the pause button. There were animators that left, they're working on projects, enlisted, fought the duration of the war, come home, and they started right back where they left off in the studio, working on the exact same project.
Yeah, it would be interesting to sort of take a deeper dive into the effect of the war efforts combined with the strike and sort of how it not only impacted Walt, but the trajectory of the company itself. And look, when we talk about Disney and collaborating with the military for the war effort as well, we should also mention too, they didn't just collaborate with the military, they also collaborated with Frank Capra to create a series of films called Why We Fight to educate and motivate troops during World War II. I think there was 7 films that they created between like 42 and 45 to help explain some of the causes and significance of the war to the troops and the public. And again, Lee, they're talking about very heavy topics: the rise of fascism, the attack on Pearl Harbor, the need to defend democracy. But Disney animators did a lot because there was a lot of sort of groundbreaking animation and these beautifully detailed and elegant visual representations of these maps. And what these films ended up being were very, very powerful educational tools to help explain complex military strategies and geopolitical situations, troop movements and battlefronts, because you can use words, but the visual medium is processed, 60,000 times faster than anything that we can read. And by making them compelling and easy to understand, I think made it much more accessible to the public. They were very, very successful. They were very highly praised. They got a lot of critical acclaim. But I think what it did too was demonstrate the power of animation, not just for entertainment, but for education and during wartime for its persuasiveness because of what you were able to convey there that you couldn't necessarily do on film.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think that this is really where I believe Walt Disney cut his teeth on the whole edutainment fact of, I don't think we wouldn't have, in my opinion, we wouldn't have Epcot and we wouldn't have all this edutainment that Disney offers if it wasn't for this period where he had to take any topic and not topics you normally talk about and then break it down and package it so anybody could understand.
And if the name Frank Capra sounds familiar, and it should to you, movies like It Happened One Night, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, You Can't Take It With You, and It's a Wonderful Life, obviously Best Picture, Best Director, was probably the one that's most recognizable to people. But again, yeah, you're right. These when we talk about these, the impact of the military on Walt and on the studio. And look, I think that starts to, again, it's a snowball effect, Lee, because I think in the context of World War II and the war efforts, even that the Goodwill Tour to South America with El Grupo, again, it was a way for Walt to help support this country that he loved so much by expanding diplomatic efforts to strengthen relationships with Latin American countries and building positive relationships with some of those nations was also strategically important to ensure stability and support for, the ongoing Allied cause in this Goodwill tour that, yes, was primarily focused on cultural exchange, but I think also had some underlying military objectives as well.
Oh, without a doubt, all those Goodwill tours, they have a diplomacy aspect is huge. I mean, we call them hearts and minds trips a lot of times. I've been on a few of these where you're there and you get immersed into the local culture And it's a great exchange between your culture and you get to know people one-on-one and how they live. But it's so critical to, at the time it was US versus Germany trying to kind of win the hearts and minds of South America. And who better to send over to win hearts and minds than Walt and his team? and they did very successful. One writer wrote that they did more in a few months than the State Department could do in 5 years.
Well, I think what people, we hear about the El Grupo trip, but we don't sometimes realize that military leaders also accompanied El Grupo. So that allowed for interactions and exchanges that could facilitate some future military collaboration, right? So there's this sense of unity, there's a sense of shared values between the U.S. and these South American countries. And I think the military recognized the power of this cultural exchange in enhancing cooperation, aligning the interests, and I think more importantly, building a sense of trust as they, from a global sort of 30,000 mile perspective, sort of strengthens this hemispheric defense, right? From a military pretense by increasing the depth of these very positive relationships.
Oh, without doubt. And it's a good thing we did it, because otherwise I don't know if we would have Jose. So we're still benefiting from that trip.
Yeah, and again, we think about things like, and we even sort of watch like Walt and El Grupo, which you should watch. I believe it's still on Disney Plus. When you look at it from a military perspective and sort of the long-term benefits and some of the underlying intentions of it, I think it gives new perspective on that trip. But look, the century-long relationship between Disney and the military continues, and it continues to evolve. The studio still coordinates film productions with the military, and obviously, if we look at it from a perspective of today, service members and their families are also not just appreciated, but really, I think, embraced by Disney, and from a theme park perspective, also welcomed in with very much open arms. So let's take a look, Lee, at Disney and the military today, because I think we're going to talk about things that I'm sure people have heard about before. We'll touch on things like Discount and Shades of Green, but I think there's a lot of other programs that are currently in place that don't necessarily get the attention that they deserve.
Oh, without a doubt, there's definitely a lot of programs, especially a lot of veteran programs Disney started. A lot of initiatives built with between the Heroes Work Here program. There's several major ones. And then also while you're visiting the parks, there's the flag retreat ceremonies.
So let's sort of hit these individually, right? Just to sort of let's talk about we'll sort of start wide and sort of work our way in, because I think when I think of Disney from a military perspective, and I know we covered it, a number of years ago on the show, the first thing that comes to mind is Disney's Shades of Green Resort, which is exclusively dedicated to providing accommodations and services to members of the military and their families. Anybody who is active and retired, including National Guards and reservists. Certain civilian employees of the Department of Defense, I think, are also eligible. But it is not just this exclusive reward, but there are special discounted rates significantly lower than other hotels in the area. The resort itself has rooms and huge suites. You can probably speak to this more than I have. It's the only resort I have not stayed in yet. A lot of different amenities and dining options and fitness center and pools and recreational activities right across from Magic Kingdom. But they also provide a lot of support services, including, tickets and helping planning military-related events and ceremonies and some of the programs and reunions and gatherings. Can you talk a little bit? Do you have any experience with Shades of Green?
Yeah, me and my family, we've stayed at Shades several times.
Lee is wearing his Shades of Green shirt right now, by the way, just for those.
I am. Yeah, I love going to Shades. It's a very nice resort. The facility itself was originally built by Disney. And I think you covered a lot of this in episode 108, I believe. So I don't want to rehash too much, but the rooms are great. They recently were renovated for the Invictus Games, I believe in 2016, I believe. You can Google check me on that, somebody out there. But anything that a normal resort has, they have at Shades. They have a spa. It's right next to the golf courses. They have Dole Whip now, actually. But it's a great service, and the staff is super friendly. It's everything you would expect from a Disney resort, even though it's not a Disney resort. It is operated by the Department of Defense, but Disney has allowed them to have that facility there, and it's just a great asset, and it's a great place for your family to go and relax and get away.
And I like the fact that it is exclusive to members of the military and their families. Part and parcel and hand in hand with that is there's also in addition to the resort, Disney offers significant discounts on tickets to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, and Disneyland Paris, which, if you have not listened recently, I'm very much in love with. Again, a way to sort of recognize and I think honor the sacrifices made by military families by providing them with additional opportunities through these military salute tickets, whether you are active or retired. You mentioned the flag retreats at the U.S. parks. We talked about those a little bit. I think it is something that every single person needs to not just sort of happen to see on their way in or way out, but really should make an effort at least once to see. Lee, why don't you just talk about quickly your experience with the flag retreat?
Oh, the flag retreat ceremony. That is probably one of my favorite moments at Disney World, without a doubt, just because it's just amazing because you get wrapped up in this whole, you're at Disney and you maximize your time. You get pulled aside from a cast member saying, "Hey, we have this ceremony. Would you like to participate?" And it's like, well, of course I would. But you are literally standing in front of the train station on show center. Essentially, you are staring at the castle and part of this ceremony, and you have all the emotions. You're a little bit nervous. You have pride, gratitude. It's just everything wrapped in one. And it's literally one of them moments where you have chills run up down your spine. And it's like, I couldn't believe I was part of it. So
just quickly, for those who are interested in, well, I'd love to do this, for my husband, wife, my son. Is it something where you have to apply early on? Does it take place, in that morning? Do you have to go to be asked, or do you go and volunteer at town hall?
So there's Disney has not published how you get involved in it necessarily. How I was selected was me and my wife were on a Keys to the Kingdom tour, and at lunch we were eating lunch, and a cast member stopped and asked me, if I'm in the military, and I was like, yeah, I'm still in. And I think I was at 18 years, and then she went on to talk about the flag ceremony and asked if I would be interested in participating. And I was like, well, of course I would. But I believe from what I can tell, they look for someone who has the military look. We've heard about the Disney look, and there's a look that a lot of times military people project. And I think they have cast members that just kind of keep their eyes open for a guest that has the look, if you will, and ask them. From what I understand, there used to be a list you could sign up for at town hall, but it just got to be so long when you have 100 people every day asking if they can be part of the flag retreat ceremony. You only pick one. I think they just have to alter the way sometimes.
And it is an absolutely solemn and reverent and beautiful. And I think if you are an American, it is very emotional because there is this procession with the color guard that carries the flag with patriotic music and the bugle, and the flag is very slowly and reverently lowered, and there's the national anthem, and there's this wonderful sense of participation and respect and paying tribute to the flag, and I think is a way to, in a very symbolic way, show their appreciation for the military. It happens right around sunset, right just before sunset, every single day. Even during COVID, they did the flag retreat ceremony every single day, which I love because it is the only flag in Magic Kingdom. Those others that you see on tops of the buildings and bunting, those are pennants. They are not actually flags, which is how and why they stay up at night. But Lee, as we started to talk about this via email, and then as I started to do the research, I was amazed and impressed at just how much more Disney does for the military that I think does not necessarily get the attention that it should. You mentioned in passing one of the programs is called Heroes Work Here. And back in 2012, the company announced this program, this company-wide initiative to hire, train, and support returning veterans. And it was a way to sort of honor and support veterans and military personnel and recognize the skills and experiences and contributions that they have. So this veterans hiring initiative took place across the entire company, not just in theme parks and resorts, but in corporate offices. And they were actively going out to recruit veterans and look in to see what their unique skill sets and talents were and are, and leadership qualities, obviously a dedication to a sense of service, and then affording them a lot of a very vast spectrum, I think, of employment opportunities that were tailored to those skills. And what I love about this program is this idea of transitioning, right? Transitioning out of the military and then training to help them transition into a civilian career within the companies. And again, Disney collaborates and partners with various government agencies and veterans organizations to enhance that impact, like the Veterans Institute, Hiring Our Heroes, and the Department of Veterans Affairs. So they provide veterans these opportunities with the program. They do a lot of community outreach and support initiatives and helping to support a lot of the nonprofit organizations as a way to not just recognize and honor in a symbolic way, but in a meaningful way, help with that transition and lead them to a career beyond the military.
Yeah, that's been a great benefit. It's great to give discounts on tickets, and which I enjoy. Thank you. Keep doing it, please. But once your military service is over, you need to transition back into what I quote unquote normal life, civilian life, and it's hard for a lot of service members because you're locked in this different world almost. Sometimes we have our own language amongst each other, and to get back into the groove, of civilian employment, it can be difficult. But yeah, they launched a program in 2012, and they've hired over 11,000 veterans since, and it's continued. And then Disney took it a step further and started the Veterans Institute, and not just them hiring service members or veterans, but teaching other companies, hey, here is how you find them, and here's how you plug them into your company, and are successful, and they're successful, and working together. And it's a great thing. Disney participates in the Skill Bridge program, which is a unique program in itself, where it allows a service member towards the very end of their career to kind of step away from their military duties and shadow somebody else in the company while they're still transitioning, or before the transition even starts. And it's just a great thing that they've done. There's a Heroes Supply Here program where they're buying goods from veteran-owned companies, disabled veteran-owned companies.
Yeah, and I love how, we're talking about a decade ago, there really was this very focused, very intense effort to support the military, like we said, not just symbolically, but in a way that is going to be beneficial in their social and economic. So you mentioned that Veterans Institute Summit, which I think, again, we don't really hear a lot about, which is it was a free event that started in 2013 that was over a weekend or over 2 days at ESPN Wide World of Sports. And this summit was a way to provide education and training and resources to help organizations better understand and support veterans in the workforce, right? So they collaborated with all these veterans advocacy groups and government agencies and businesses to offer free training and workshops and presentations about how, right, and best practices on recruiting and hiring, and I think very importantly, retaining veterans in the workplace. It's one thing to do a hire and then it's a short term, but being able to understand the military culture and translating some of those military skills into civilian job roles and creating an environment that is supportive and very inclusive, I think really helped to provide a lot of practical advice for these companies into how to integrate veterans into the workforce and promote their personal growth as well, right? It's not just for the benefit of the companies, but by sharing best practices and gaining some of these practical insights. And then I think not just creating this summit, but providing ongoing support to the companies and to the veterans in the workplace with resources and research and expertise really makes that very, very significant. And it allows Disney to sort of, there's this ripple effect of what they're doing, not just in the four corners of the Disney company, but to other companies. And it was obviously shut down during COVID, but I know has come back over the past few years. And I think it's now presented by the Disney Institute, the Veterans Institute Summit, and the Wounded Warrior Project when it takes place in Walt Disney World. You mentioned SkillBridge, and for again, if you're not familiar with SkillBridge, it's a DoD. It's a Department of Defense program that provides civilian job training for, again, these transitioning service members. So as long as you are eligible under the SkillBridge program, it provides fellowship opportunities and the ability to get hands-on experience and field work on real-world projects in a wide spectrum of aspects of the company, operations and management and entertainment and technology, in an effort to help, again, sort of build on and build up a skill set. And I think, too, Lee, it also helps them network, and have access to a network of people and executives within the company that helps to, it doesn't necessarily guarantee them employment within the company, but it helps give them the opportunity to apply for permanent positions and give them the skills, experiences, and I think that the connections that will help support the transition to civilian careers.
Yeah, it's definitely, you nailed it on the head. It's a great program, but does allow transition service members into a kind of a foot in the door, so to speak. And, not only you network, and you also get to, you get to pick what color shirt you wear in the morning.
I mean, we laugh, but that's something that, we don't think about, right? We sort of take it for granted that we have, a closet of colors to choose from. And there is a transition that has to take place and a mindset, which is not necessarily easy for everyone.
Yeah, it's definitely something I look forward to doing here some future. But yeah, there's just these little different aspects you just don't occur to you until you have the opportunity. And it's great that Disney works with the Department of Defense and is a partner in that, in all these initiatives. It's just wonderful. And it's very much appreciated by the veteran and service community.
Yeah, and I think too, Lee, I mean, I think there's a lot of other ways that Disney not only works with the military, but helps to support the military. I think bring attention to the military so that, for example, the company has a long-standing tradition of entertaining military personnel through USO shows, the United Service Organization shows. They'll send performers, they'll send characters around the world to help, again, not just boost morale, but I think give a connection to and a sense of home. They continue to collaborate with the military. We talked about some of the different military appreciation events. The volunteers program, which encourages employees, cast members to engage in community service, often supports a lot of military-related initiatives like care packages for deployed troops and events for military families. I know that from working with Make-A-Wish, they have a partnership with Make-A-Wish that extends to military families and, creating moments and experiences for children who are connected to the military world. And we were even talking beforehand. I think people sometimes don't realize, there's a number of tributes and museums around the country dedicated to the military. We were talking about one that we had both, I visited a couple of years ago, you most recently visited, were these military history exhibits, including the New Orleans World War II Museum exhibit.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to actually go there yesterday with the World War II exhibit that the Disney Family Museum has actually set up a Disney in World War II. And it's mind blowing, just the different aspects that Disney had it during the war then, and even continues today. Throughout history, you see that they were making children's books, of course, back then, and even now today, with the Blue Star book program, they're giving books to military children for free, to service members. It never ends. And it's great to see that the Disney company is continuing these efforts and is kind of still doing what would Walt do. And one of the things is support the military, and they're still doing that. And it's great to see.
Yeah. And I, it's interesting because I said there's sometimes not a lot of attention that's brought to it. And I think it's like a double-edged sword. It's a catch-22 because I love the fact that Disney does this and is continuing to be so all in on it. But they don't do it in a way like, hey, look at us, look at what we're doing. They do it relatively quietly. They don't they promote it only in a sense of making people aware of it, as opposed to, like going back to Walt. Walt wasn't doing it for the PR. He wasn't doing it to sort of pat himself on the back. He was doing it out of a sense of obligation. And I love that the company continues that legacy of why they do what they do. I even see, on places like the Disney Parks blog or at events, Disney continues to honor some of their cast members, especially around, Veterans Day and some of the holidays, honoring cast members who are former military or children of military and recognizing them in the parks, not just to their peers, but to guests as well, and bringing attention to them as well. And to that point, we could do a top 10 Disney cast members who had a connection to the military because, going through, look, we can start at Walt Disney World, right? General Joe Potter, a key figure in the development of Disneyland and Walt Disney World, was helped sort of a lot of the technical aspects of Disneyland and the planning and development of Florida, helping to acquire some of the land as well. Like General Joe Potter was, in the Admiral Joe Fowler, same thing. Joined Disney back in the 50s, had a lot of key roles in the development, certainly here in Walt Disney World, which is why there are so many things named after them. But there's a number of other figures too that you would know from Disney that have other connections to the military as well. Let's just sort of quickly hit on a couple of the ones that I know we were chatting about earlier.
Yeah, it goes on and on. Like this Disney well is so deep. You have Xavier Atencio, who was a photo interpreter for U.S. Army Air Forces. Looking at the pictures taken from aerial photography and that they turned into strategic planning. It just goes on and on.
I think one of the ones that is interesting to me is Major Donnie Dunnigan. And I'm sure a lot of people, might not necessarily know that name. It's not necessarily one that you hear about all the time. Very, very highly decorated Marine veteran of the Vietnam War, served for more than a quarter of a century, retired as a major. But he has a very direct connection, not just to Disney, but also to Walt, because he was chosen by Walt to be the voice. And you're waiting for this, like, who is this big, tough military guy that he's... Donnie Dunnigan was the voice of Bambi, which he kept as a secret, right? He kept as a secret from, obviously, his fellow Marines who maybe don't want to, he's afraid of the blowback that he got, but he even kept it a secret from his wife. Like he kept his past as Bambi a secret because he didn't want to be, known as sort of Major Bambi.
Well, and before he was a major, he was a drill instructor. He was a Marine drill instructor. And known to be one of the youngest Marine drill instructors. Can you imagine being in boot camp? How would you take Bambi yelling at you? Seriously. So I understand why he maybe kind of kept that on the down low. But, he was a war hero in his own right. He earned a Bronze Star, 3 Purple Hearts. I mean, he was a hard Marine, but also Bambi.
Right. Well, look at Dean Jones is another one, right? That Don Cat, the Love Bug, and the Herbie film series. He was in the U.S. Navy during World War II. Again, lied about his age. They corrected his service records later on, but he was in the Pacific Theater aboard a destroyer during the war, and then afterwards starts this career in acting and this partnership with Disney. But same thing too. He's this lovable, charismatic, comedic guy who had this, very serious career in the military as well.
Oh, without a doubt. You have 2 of Walt's 9 old men that left to go serve in World War II. It's just they have these, it's almost a separate, it is, and I understand it. When you go off to war, you kind of compartmentalize that aspect. You leave whatever you do, you go do what you need to do and try to come back and have a normal life. But most people don't know how many legitimate war heroes that are cast members or animators or actors. My goodness.
Like Don Knotts.
Don Knotts.
Listen, whether you know him from the as Barney Fife or from the Apple Dumpling Gang, Don Knotts served in the Army during the Second World War as well. And he enlisted in 1943 in what was known as the Special Services Branch. So he was there he was on the front lines, but he was there and entertaining troops and performing in comedy shows, and then obviously went on to have a long career with Disney as well. But, like you said, that list sort of goes on. And I think the point of this is when we talk about Disney and the military, people's minds might go, well, yeah, of course they do Shades of Green, or yes, I know they did, some of the propaganda films, but they don't realize just how wide and extensive those threads go and those connections go, not just in the past and history going back to Walt Disney, but continuing on to this day in very significant and many meaningful types of ways as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's never ending. I mean, you have Buddy Hackett, you have James Earl Jones, you have Adam Driver, there's somebody, fairly recent to the Disney world. And some of the executives.
When we say about actors, I start thinking about people like R. Lee Ermey, right? Who name, like you like, wait, I think I know. If you heard his voice, you know exactly who we're talking about. And you might know him as the sort of the leader of the Green Army Men in Toy Story, and obviously has a very extensive film career. Not all of them Disney, but very, very extensive film career as well. But there are so many of these large and small touch points to and through the military, and this type of magic in the military connection and this idea of joining forces, not sort of just tangentially, but in ways that continue to make a real and significant difference. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk about this, Lee, because I think it's significant. And whether you, a family member, a friend that you know is in the military or not, I think it's just important that people are aware of not just the history and the legacy, but the efforts that Disney is taking part in today.
Yeah, I just keep looking over these notes and I keep finding the Sherman Brothers.
Yeah. Oh God. How
have we not touched on their military service? I mean, Robert Sherman earned a Purple Heart. They wound up having to walk with a cane the rest of his life because of being shot in the knee.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed that I sort of forgot about the Sherman Brothers, because, like you said, we just there are so many people that have that connection currently or had that connection in the past, and it's like I said, it's why I appreciate you so much, not just because of your service and sacrifice, but the fact that you and your wife are continuing to try and share a lot of these stories, and more importantly, help with other people, especially military families that want to come to Disney and want to experience that we get to enjoy. Lee, thank you so much for, again, your service, your sacrifice, for suggesting this, for listening to the show. Tell people where they can find you and where they can find your channel. We
are on pretty much all the social medias, but mostly with YouTube. But my wife, she does a little bit of TikTok and Instagram. I'm on Twitter. It's all under Salute the Magic on YouTube. If you search Salute the Magic on any other platforms, you should be able to find it. But our only goal is just to try to help the families instead of not wasting time, but spending so much time trying to find out how they can save money at Disney and other theme parks, just to try to condense it to make it quicker. And if you have any questions, just shoot us an email or a comment, depending on whatever platform you're on. We try to respond as quickly as we can. We both still have full-time jobs, so this is just something we do on the side. But just try to help the other families so they can spend more time with their family.
I'll obviously put a link to this in the show notes, and I'll also put this in the Clubhouse at wdwradio.com/clubhouse. We can continue this conversation there, and I'd love for you to participate and answer some questions that people can sort of see and chime in on as a group in the Clubhouse. Lee Stanley, thank you again so very much. I sincerely appreciate you, not just for your time today, but in your service to our country. And from me and my family, I want to say thank you.
No, well, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure and kind of a dream. I've been a fan of you for a few years, and it's like, I can't believe he's emailing me, asking me to be on the show.
Wait, I have one last question for you. This is, I think, is the most important question of the day. It's not really, but I'm saying this half jokingly. There's only one restaurant I've never been to in Walt Disney World. Just how good is the veal piccata from Mangino's, the Italian restaurant at Shades of Green?
I enjoyed it a lot. It's been a while since I had that because we wound up eating at the park, but it is definitely, and I'll tell you what, next time I'm there, I will shoot you, actually, I'll shoot you an email when we'll be there. If you want to check it out for yourself, you can be my guest.
I would love it, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's time for our Walt Disney World Trivia Question of the Week, where I challenge you with a question about Walt Disney World's history, a little piece of trivia, or maybe to ask you to identify where in Disney you may have heard a sound, song, or quote. If you think you know the answer, you can enter for a chance to win a Disney Prize package. And this week's trivia contest, once again, is brought to you by you. Because without you, there is no WDW Radio. You literally help bring every episode of the show to life. And in addition to listening and helping to spread the word, if you want to help the show for as little as $1 per month and get exclusive rewards every month, like monthly scavenger hunts, group video calls, we have a private Facebook group, there's merchandise including shirts, stickers, monthly care packages from the parks, early access and discounts to special events, and much more. You can visit wdwradio.com/support. I love and appreciate you and am so grateful for the friendship and the help that you give me and the show, and I love being able to give back to you through the nation every month. And don't forget that a portion of your contribution goes to our Dream Team project, which benefits the Make-A-Wish Foundation of America. Thanks to you, we've raised more than $550,000 to help children with life-threatening illnesses and their families visit Walt Disney World at a time that they need it most. I want to thank some new and longtime members, including Ashley, Maggie Gavigan, Margot Pitts, Erica Nance, and Dana Russo. Thank you for being part of the nation and my family. Again, to find out more and join the nation, you can visit wdwradio.com/support. Now, before we get to this week's question, we're going to go back, review last week's, and select our winner. And so with July 4th coming up this week, I wanted to ask you a question about the 4th of July in Walt Disney World. And so in the second act of Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress, July 4th is being celebrated in the 1920s, but some of the family are getting dressed in costume, which is kind of weird because John and Sarah, the parents, are dressing as George and Martha Washington. That's fine. But who or what is their daughter Sarah dressing as? That was the question last week. Thanks to so many of you entered, got this one correct, and knew that she is, of course, the Statue of Liberty. And so if you remember, John is talking about how Sarah is sewing a George Washington costume for him to wear to the Independence Day celebration because her ladies' club is in charge of the festivities, and that the whole family, like it or not, kids, you're going to have fun, is going to be performing in this presentation. So George and Sarah are George and Martha Washington. Little Jimmy is dressed in a colonial outfit with his grandfather standing next to the radio, which is playing patriotic music. And times never change. Dads will be dads. Dad is yelling at his daughter, Patricia, to hurry up and get ready. And she is, of course, sitting in the room on the right, wearing a Statue of Liberty costume, worried that her new boyfriend is going to be scared away if he sees her in costume. You might not be that far off, Patricia. And if that doesn't scare him away, when he opens the door and sees that Uncle Orville's in the bathtub with his air cooling system, there's no chance he's coming back. Anyway, I took all the correct entries, randomly selected one, and last week you were playing for a WDW Radio mug, pin, and a mystery prize. And last week's winner, randomly selected, is Carmen Deonda. So Carmen, congratulations. I'll get your prize package out to you right away. If you played last week and didn't win, that's okay, because here's your next chance to enter in this week's timely and relevant Walt Disney World Trivia Challenge. So we're talking about Disney and the connection to the military. And it wasn't just Walt's brothers who were members of the armed forces, and we obviously talked about how Walt wanted to be, but was part of the Red Cross Ambulance Corps. But his brothers were not the only members of the family who were part of the U.S. military. The question this week is to tell me what Disney character, part of the Disney family, what Disney character was officially discharged from the U.S. military by the Department of Defense. I'm not kidding. You have until Sunday, July 9th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern to go to WDWRadio.com, click on this week's podcast, use the form there. Again, you're going to play for a mug, a pin, and a mystery prize. So good luck, God bless America, and have fun. that is going to wrap up this week's show. Thank you again for taking the time to tune in this and every week, for being part of not just the community, but my extended family. I'd love to hear from you. Have you or any member of your family experienced any of Disney's support of military in the parks or resorts or through the programs? I'd love for you to share your experience and your story. I'll pose this question, and we can talk about this week's show over in the WDW Radio Clubhouse at wdwradio.com/clubhouse, where I invite you to be part of the community and conversation. You can also share your story by calling the voicemail at 407-900-9391. That's 407-900-WDW1. You can also just call just to say hi, hello from the parks, a question or a comment about this or another week's show. You can also connect with me on social. I'm at Lou Mongello on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Please be sure to like the WDW Radio page on Facebook and turn on notifications there and the Clubhouse so you can be notified next time I go live, not just every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern for our regularly scheduled WDW Radio live show, but when I am live out and about and from the parks, sometimes unscheduled. Of course, as much as I love connecting with you online, nothing beats a handshake and a hug. So check out our events page at wdwradio.com/events. I'll have information soon about our next meet of the month, as well as other events, including upcoming cruises, Adventures by Disney, and on-the-road events, including some that I'm planning and I promise I'm going to announce very, very soon. And speaking of in-person events, I'd like to invite you to my Momentum Weekend Workshop in Walt Disney World, September 29th through October 1st. It is a 3-day, one-room, 20-session, 50-person event for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and business owners that will help you grow your brand, your business, and your network. I just announced this past week on a live video the sessions and speakers. You can go to LouMongello.com/momentum to watch a replay of the video for this year's event. But to just give you a quick idea of some of what we're going to cover, I'm going to do a session on, if I had to start over, this is what I would do differently. I'm going to talk about some of the lessons I've learned and the paths I've taken to help you learn from my mistakes and learn from my nearly 20-year journey as an entrepreneur. We're going to have a monetization mastery panel discussion. We're going to talk about email sequences and the secrets to building a stronger community. We're going to have a social storytelling panel about crafting some of these compelling narratives across different mediums, the magic of keywords and how and why to use good SEO. I'm going to do another session on the relationship economy and unlocking the power of collaboration and community. We're going to have another workshop session about crafting a compelling media kit and pitch deck to help elevate your impact and unlock opportunities, practical bookkeeping strategies, AI in action, and leveraging the power of AI as almost your personal digital assistant. We're going to have Energizer sessions, a Friday night kickoff, networking activities, table talks, support stations, Q&A, campfire conversation, and working on what's next to help you design your plan to keep moving forward. Momentum is different and it's special because we do the work in the room. We help you create meaningful relationships and help keep your business moving forward in a positive direction. Again, you can learn more by visiting LouMongello.com/momentum. And if you watch the replay of the live video of the announcement to the very end, I have a special exclusive discount code that you can use to save $100 off your workshop ticket, as well as the optional Mastermind Day ticket on Monday. On Monday, we do an intensive 8-person deep dive mastermind to help sort of implement what you learned at the conference and really put it into action with your time in the spotlight, where the focus is all on you and your business. Again, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, lou@wdwradio.com, or just go to loumongello.com/momentum. I will tell you, we're about 70% sold out now. The event is sold out every single year. I would love to help you, so I hope to see you in September. Speaking of seeing you in September, if you want to come to Momentum or Walt Disney World or Disneyland or Disney Cruise Line or Aulani or anywhere on the planet, the best advice I can give you is to use our friends over at Mousefan Travel for any and all of your vacation planning needs. Their services come at no cost to you. It's who I recommend because it's who I use. Most importantly, it's because of who I trust. You can visit them and get a free no obligation quote at mousefantravel.com. And finally, my friend, and you are my friend, whether we have met yet or not, all I ask is that if you like the show, please help spread the word. How do you best do that? Not just by subscribing to the show, but by telling a friend, by taking a screenshot while you're listening, tagging me at Lou Mongello, sharing it on social, sending a link to this or your favorite episode to a friend, and inviting your friend to join our friends in the WDW Radio Clubhouse And if you can, take just a second to rate and review the show, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite app. I want to thank some recent reviewers like Dizdad, who said, I'm a longtime Disney fan. I discovered the show during COVID, feeds my love of Disney nostalgia like nothing else, and offers wonderful insights in and behind the scenes at the parks. Great listen. Thank you, Dizdad, and thank you, my friend. I mean it when I say I know how valuable your time is. There are so many other ways you can spend it and distractions that we have and that you choose to spend and share some of it with me means so very much. Please always remember to choose the good and react accordingly, because every action, no matter how small, has the power to create this incredible ripple effect of positivity. And by choosing the good, you not only make yourself happier, but you can have that same impact on other people as well. And if you are in the U.S., if you're stationed somewhere else, if you are living abroad somewhere, happy Independence Day. And if you're not, happy 4th of July, right? It's about choosing the good. There's always something to be happy for every single day. All you have to do is look for it. Remember, every day might not be good, but there's something good in every single day. I love you. I appreciate you. I hope to see you Wednesday night on the live show or right back here again next week. So until next time, see ya.
Lou, how's it going? This is Herbie calling from Minnesota. Just got done listening to your talk about the places to stay. If you could make your own hotel, have it be whatever you'd want to be. And all I gotta ask is, Mongello, what are you thinking? How did you not have a Society for Explorers and Adventurers themed hotel? I could see an entire hotel with different wings themed to different ways or different places, right? You'd have a wing featuring Albert Falls or Mary Oceaneer or Jock Lindsay even. Can you imagine a Harrison High Tower hotel? That would just be fantastic, all in one. A Society of Explorers and Adventurers where you get to partake and be a part of the society itself. Just had to call, let you know what my thoughts were on having a hotel like that, and I can tell you this, I would be the first one to want to stay at a place like that. Well, thank you, and take care.
Hey, Lou, this is John O'Brien from Southbury, Connecticut. We just finished listening to you and AJ do Top 100. It was fantastic. It got us all the way on our trip down to the Jersey Shore, to Highlands, New Jersey. I think you know that. And the only thing I think you missed was the sandwich at the Boardwalk Cafe there, the Boardwalk Deli. The pastrami Reuben is a great sandwich for two people. We're avid listeners of both of you, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Hey, Lou Mongello, it's Patrice Roberti from Metro Boston's Thursday. It is June 22nd, and I'm calling an idea for when you have nothing else to do, which I know that, but what I would love, last night I was listening to episode number 549, 10 Top Seats in Walt Disney World, and just listening to it and you talking about it and where you walk around and how you think about things and how you see things with your so much. There's so many years of enthusiastic love of this place and deep knowledge. I mean, you have the enthusiasm, you have the absolute knowledge. And I was like, oh, I wish I could walk around Disney World with Lou and just have him tell me what he sees and how he sees it, because it's really, really, really interesting. You must know that. You're really good at it. So anyway, I knew you did those audio tours, so I went on your website and I looked at that. And it looks like there's only one on Amazon now, and it looks like the other ones are on Apple, but you have to have an Apple membership. And I'm a Samsung Android person, so I don't want to get another membership. I'm sorry to say, just for that, because it looks like you lose them if you give up the membership. So to make a long story short, excuse me, when you have nothing else to do, I wish you would do some new walking tours, and it could be you and Lou. I know you don't like to do things by yourself, but it could be you and Lou. It could be just a listener and you walking around, just saying what you see and how you see it, and where you would sit and where you used to sit and why you sit there and how you see things and how it used to be. I think that would be great. I think that could be podcast episodes or maybe even something you sell on your own website. I wish you sold those audio tours as downloads on your own website. I would totally buy them. I just don't want an Apple membership. So thank you. It's just such a joy. I've never been to Disney, but someone who goes to Disney a lot said to me the other day, you know more about Disney than anyone who's never been there. And I said, that is thanks to Lou Mongello. So take care. Hope you have a great day, a great weekend, and a great summer. Bye-bye.